Now, you may well have heard that the latest opinion polls are not good for the Prime Minister. They are the same as the ones towards the end of last year, and they now show that Peter Dutton is up there and level with Anthony Albanese as the preferred Prime Minister. I'll give more detail about that a little bit later. But we have two very different ways of trying to convince Australians to vote the way they want us to at this upcoming election. Peter Dutton has been giving major speeches where he explains his values. Remember this great line from his speech in Melbourne?
That we send our children to school for an education, not for an indoctrination.
Well, in Brisbane, he continued on the weekend, hitting it out of the park with the three questions which have an obvious answer.
The Coalition, the Liberal Party, the National Party, the LNP, we are the party of small business. We are the party of managing the economy. We know how to fix up Labor's mess. We've done it before and we will do it again after this election.
As for the Prime Minister, well, yet again, another day, another not $1 but $2 billion. Not his money, your money. Money that, of course, will not turn up in a budget if they happen to pop one out before the next federal election. Why? It's all investments, you see. Therefore, it is off budget. But we decided to go back over the 20 days that we have been together in 2025 and have a look at the Prime Minister's wild spending, because a desperate and weak politician is getting wilder by the day. Have a look at this stuff, right? Join me over here. Today, $2 billion. $10 million 5 days ago. Then $5 million. Then $20 million. But we keep going. $3 billion. There was also the best part of $4.2 billion. Another $7.2 billion. Now, all of this has added up to billions, literally billions of dollars that have been promised by the Prime Minister. Extraordinary amounts of money. Extraordinary amounts of money, which, to be honest, he should be embarrassed by. But, of course, he's not, because he thinks somehow this is all going to turn it around. That's the number that he is currently promising when it comes to the upcoming election. But guess what? It's not moving the polls. Because in this election year, one thing is very clear, as we must remain laser-focused every night, the key questions, the key data. No one's waking up surprised, but as it was in 2019, it is again in 2025. Nothing is inevitable. Minority government is not inevitable for this government. Likely, but not inevitable. Peter Dutton being able to get into a position to form a minority government, not inevitable, yet not impossible either. So we have to keep an eye on the data. The best data is, of course, the bookies. They all say the coalition is going to form government. Doesn't know which type, but they say there's going to be a change of government at this election. And the latest poll in the Financial Review today shows us that the ALP, their primary vote is basically exactly where it was at the last election. Now, that means it will be able to hold on to many of its seats. However, important to note here, that the primary vote at 32%, basically the same as the last election. For the LNP, you can see that they are back up now to the magical 40. If there is a 4 in front of their number, then they can win an election. In fact, they most likely would win an election. The X factor, as always, the Teals. The fact that the independents across the country are hitting at 15%, well, this, of course, matters in lots of different areas. It matters from Daly in Western Sydney through to Bob Catter in North Queensland. Of course, it also means the Teals. The Greens, 13%, and there was no number given for One Nation or anything else that is on the deck. That means in a two-party preferred, as you saw before, 51-49, a change of government potentially on its way. As for the overall trend of things, thankfully, the Financial Review puts together the poll of polls, where they show us the image here of time since the 2022 federal election, where they went up and then they went downy, down, and have been sub the best part of 50, certainly for the past 12 months and if not slightly longer, depending on your different poll. But the bit that is going to cause the Prime Minister worry, despite the fact that there's $1 billion here and $1 billion there, an announcement every single day, hoping that somehow people will run towards a Prime Minister that they've otherwise wanted to throw into the bin. Well, preferred Prime Minister. Let's have a look at this. 43% for the Prime Minister, 43% for Peter Dutton. That's the exact same findings as the Resolve poll from a few weeks ago. Now, that had them at 35 each, with a much bigger undecided number. But look at that number. Just 4% of Australians still haven't made their mind up. Just 4%. And as always, if you take undecided, split it 50-50, well, they both end up on 45. Now, if it goes, 3 to 1, well, obviously, one of them's going to pull ahead here. But generally speaking, unless a government is absolutely guaranteed to be turf, the sitting Prime Minister remains the preferred Prime Minister. But if the opposition leader overtakes the Prime Minister, you can start to put your bets on with those bookies. But the lefty media reinforcements are there. Our old mate Lefty Laura Tingle, who's been hosting over there on Taxpayer TV. Well, she, of course, writing in Taxpayer article on the Taxpayer website, says that Peter Dutton can't dodge the spotlight as the election draws closer, or his unresolved problems. Ooh, there's something nobody's really seen about this guy that they're willing to put level pegging with the current Prime Minister. Quote, "It feels like for all the world that the coalition is relying on the disgruntlement of voters with the government for what they are really in for when it comes to tough times for a lot of people, rather than actively producing serious policies to do nothing about." So she's now having a go at the Liberal Party for being too small a target, when, of course, I didn't notice any criticism or, in fact, any reference to what little was offered of the small target at the last election of Anthony Albanese, where the promise was this, remember? That a Labor government will lower the cost of living. That was the promise. That's what they got the job. That's what they sat in front of the 27 million Australians as the board of directors and said, we will lower the cost of living. None of that has happened. Not one bit of it has happened. In fact, everything way higher under this government. You know it from everything from the cost of eggs all the way through to trying to pay off a house. Oh, but Laura's not done yet. She's trying to find the crack inside the Dutton armour, and she thinks, well, to play the old tactic, let's go to the anonymous sources. Some believe that Dutton is just not comfortable talking economics. The some, apparently, are members of his own team. Whether he is or isn't, there are increasing frustrations among some of his colleagues that it needs to be done. This is the classic Canberra game, right? Oh, the leader doesn't have the full support of the team. There's some disgruntlement with the tactics that they're putting in place. So then all of the Canberra people turn around and rather than talking about the values that have been expressed in the speeches, the lies that are there for all to see, the failures that also are as clear as day to all Australians. No. The question that comes from the professional political class is, Prime Minister, about what Laura Tingle says, do you have the full support of every MP about everything you are ever doing? And then the story gets written up. Dutton, unable to confirm, everyone thinks he is amazing on every point. It's a game. It's one of the many games, one of the many silver bullets that they're going to try to fire in the direction of the person who the polls are telling us consistently is now even pegging with a Prime Minister who isn't even at the end of his first term. I'll explain the issues about why that's the case, more polling on that in a moment or two's time. But don't forget as well, every time when Lefty Laura Tingle or the people who are her anonymous sources play this game, she thought that Australia's response to Peter Dutton saying that we need to lower immigration and stop foreign buyers being able to buy Australian property for the first 2 years of his prime ministership. Why he doesn't talk about this more often, I don't know, but still, that is his policy. Remember what she thought would happen, that racist whites would turn on anyone who looked different at an auction.
A major political leader to be saying, as Nikki says, you know, everything that's going wrong in this country is because of migrants. And, you know, I had this sudden flash of people turning up to try to rent a property or at an auction